Alright, top 5 time. If you're a movie related YouTube channel, you're required by law to do a yearly ranking video or risk the brig. So, because I value my life, here is mine. Generic disclaimer, I haven't seen every movie that's released this year that I wanted to, but yeah, these are the 5 movies from this year that I liked the most. Also, this is my opinion, so do with that what you will. Number 5 on this list is kind of a big surprise for me, but it is Talk to Me. I didn't know anything about this movie when it released. In fact, the only reason I went to see it is because they talked about it on the Weekly Planet and said it was good, but I thought this was a really great horror movie. I've said in a couple past videos that horror is not typically my genre that I connect most to, so when I find a good one, I really latch onto it, and this one did it a lot for me. It kept it really simple and stuck with its concept throughout the whole thing. It wasn't really doing anything besides trying to be a spooky horror movie. There were some really solid bits of imagery that stuck with me, and despite being in one of the worst theater experiences of my entire life, I still managed to be really invested in the movie the whole way through. This isn't one I want to talk about too much if you haven't seen it, because I don't want to spoil it. I just think more horror movies could follow Talk to Me's example of staying simple and true to what you are. It also nailed the ending for me, which is the most important part when you're making a movie because that's what you're stuck with, and I feel like a lot of horror movies kind of flop in the end. But Talk to Me didn't. Killers of the Flower Moon. This is what the 14-year-old version of myself would call a boring movie for old people. But now that I like boring movies for old people, I thought this was really good. I wasn't familiar with the real-world history behind Killers before seeing the movie, so seeing it in real time was a really special experience. I think Scorsese manages to have like one of the freshest voices in filmmaking, even though the guy is like 1,000 years old. And that really permeates through the entire movie here. There's yet to be a Scorsese movie where I feel like his heart isn't in it. I feel like that isn't necessarily true of most big-time popular directors. They usually have 1 or 2 things in their filmography that you're like, okay, that's probably a paycheck more than anything. I'm looking at you, Ready Player One. Not to mention, there's obviously the cast, which has Leo, Lily Gladstone, and Robert De Niro, who are all heavyweights, obviously. But then you also have supporting cast members like Jesse Plemons, who just adds a lot to the movie. This one just made me think and feel a lot. It stuck with me, and I'm excited to rewatch it in the future. It's a slow-moving, really long movie that will probably turn a lot of people off, but I think that a lot of people in this day and age can kind of turn their brains off and count something out because of its length, especially movies, when I feel like that's kind of an unfair way to judge the medium. I think a movie should be as short or as long as it's supposed to be, and as long or as short as the filmmaker wants it to be. I want 90-minute breezy movies, and I want 4 hours Snyder cuts too. I think Scorsese used every minute, and it's clear that he thought that everything in this movie was important enough to keep it. Speaking of long movies, Oppenheimer was my 3rd favorite movie of the year. Being part of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, it had a massive popularity boost because of it, and but on its own merit, this is probably my favorite Nolan movie that's not The Dark Knight. I do have a whole video about Oppenheimer and Barbie on my channel if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts on that, but to give you the Cliff Notes version, Cillian Murphy is incredible. He always has been, but seeing him in a leading role on a big movie like this just confirms that. The whole cast, including Robert Downey Jr. and Emily Blunt, are on the top of their game. Roderick is here. You could just tell that Nolan really cared on this one. I mean, he's probably one of the only people who cares on every single one. You can just feel the attention to detail in every scene. Scenes like the bomb detonation and the scene where Oppenheimer gives the speech to all the like thundering hooves of people.
I'm sorry, the what?
The hooves, because they're stomping.
Hooves?
Yeah.
Just say the thundering crowd. The thundering hooves of people makes no sense.
You could feel it in the scenes like the bomb detonation and where Oppenheimer gives his speech to thunderous applause. Really just a deep and personal look at this guy's life. I thought it was great. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. The movie that brought me out of my YouTube coma is next up, and I have a bone to pick with some of y'all. I feel like people have been souring on this movie a little bit, saying that just because it's not as good as Fallout, it's not really that good, and I think that's a really high bar to clear. And Dead Reckoning Part 1 was still really rad in my opinion. Again, I have a whole video on this one, so be sure to check that out if you want to hear more extensive thoughts on Mission Impossible. But to recap, these McQuarrie-Cruise collaborations are always going to be an extremely exciting experience for me. I love Top Gun Maverick. I love all the Mission Impossibles they've done together. And just like all those, the stunts are incredible. They have the additions of Haley Atwell and Pom Klementieff to the cast, which I think brought a new energy and a new life to it. They brought back characters from the franchise's past, like Kittredge and Vanessa Kirby's character, and I thought both of those were really good inclusions as well. And I feel like a lot of the conversation around this movie got steamrolled by Barbenheimer, just like the movie's box office. I don't think that's fair, because I think this is a really successful Part 1 movie. Yeah, hot take incoming. A lot of Part 1 movies do not feel satisfying on their own right. They leave the audience feeling disappointed, like a certain spider-related movie also from this year. But Mission Impossible left me satisfied while still looking forward to Part 2, which may not be a Part 2 anymore, but that's neither here nor there. The train scene! The car chase! Come on! Before I get to number 1, I want to throw in a couple honorable mentions that people might attack me for not putting in here. Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. It's probably the best Ninja Turtle movie ever, and my favorite animated movie of the year. You can also check my full video out for that one as well. And I just threw shade at Across the Spider-Verse, but it's still very good and just missed out on being in the top 5 for me. Bottoms. This movie was a really fun time with a very funny cast. Definitely the best comedy movie that I saw this year. Past Lives was extremely beautiful looking and extremely emotional. Definitely worth checking out. Godzilla Minus One. I don't historically love Godzilla movies, but this movie really blew me away. It gave me Top Gun Maverick vibes in the best way possible, and Godzilla's design was really horrifying. I've also watched Shin Godzilla since then, and I think this one beats it out. Alright, so number 1. Look, I can't escape it. To my heart of hearts, I am and always will be a shill. So Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is my favorite movie of the year. Like I said, I am a shill for all superhero things, but especially when those superhero things are emotional, heartfelt, and fun to watch. I'm a huge James Gunn fan. All 3 Guardians films are my top 3 in the MCU, and the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker are at the top of my favorite DCEU projects as well. So this movie is just a slam dunk for me. It feels like no matter who your favorite Guardian is, they get their moment to shine here. Rocket is obviously the beating heart of this specific Guardians movie, but Quill, Drax, Mantis, and the rest of the gang all get really nice moments here as well. The moments that staked me through the heart the most were Gamora and Peter's goodbye to each other, and Mantis and Drax's little wave goodbye. Both of those moments were probably the closest I came to shedding a tear in a theater this year. Not to mention a great villain, lots of laughs, some beautiful imagery, plus giving these characters a proper send-off, which is the stuff I've been begging the MCU to do forever now. So there it is, my 5 favorite movies of the year. Overall, I feel that 2023 was a very strong year for movies. I saw more movies in theaters than ever before. If you're curious what movies in 2024 I'm most looking forward to, I made a little New Year Instagram post on the Blank Production House Instagram where you can see that. And as far as the worst movies of the year, I really don't like being negative about film. Every movie, no matter how big or small the budget is, was someone's passion project that they poured time and effort into. To make a list of which people failed at that most just feels a bit mean-spirited and not the type of message I want to portray on this channel. That said, the worst movie was Ant-Man 3.